Is it me, or are budget gaming PCs basically extinct in 2023? And this could be down to just Nvidia or AMD not really releasing many great entry-level graphics cards, or it could be down to something else. And I know a lot of people don't really care about AAA games. All they care about is competitive esports experiences, and that's why you might be interested in this video if that's you, because I've built a PC for £250 and it can play esports games at 1080p with relatively decent frame rates. But before I get into the video though, are you more into esports competitive multiplayer online titles, or do you prefer a story-driven experience? I'm kind of on both sides, but as I've got a bit older, I sort of prefer AAA story-driven experiences now. But what do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. I primarily designed this PC here to play esports games at 1080p and getting around roughly 90 frames per second on average. I have also benchmarked some AAA games, but it's more of an afterthought, as AAA games on a £250 PC is kind of doable, but it's not amazing. So let's get into the specs. At the heart of this PC is the Intel Core i7-3770, and this 4-core 8-thread chip may be old, but when paired with something like an RX 570, it's not bad at all. I did make a video on this CPU a few months ago now, and to be fair, it pleasantly surprised me and it still performs pretty decently. Speaking of the RX 570, this is the GPU I went with for today's build. It's still relatively decent, even though this one is the 4GB version. It's still plenty of video memory for esports games. And 6 years after its launch, the RX 570 is still receiving regular GPU driver updates from AMD, so this thing's still got a bit of life left in it. Other specs include 16GB of DDR3 memory running in dual channel at 1600 MHz. And in the UK now, you can get a kit of this used for around £20, which is not bad at all. And for a gaming rig, 16GB is plenty, especially for esports and lightweight titles. With 1TB SSDs costing south of £50 here in the UK, it's a no-brainer to go with one. Gone are the days of getting a 256GB boot drive and pairing that with a 1TB hard drive for your games. This YUCON drive cost me just over £42, and it's a SATA SSD, and it even has a DRAM cache, which is essential for an SSD's performance. At first I didn't know what the motherboard was called, but then a viewer said to me it was an XUM B75 chipset motherboard, and to be fair, this motherboard is not bad at all. It's even got a Gen 3 NVMe slot on it. But the main thing being is it's got enough connectivity for us with USB 3.0 headers on it, which is quite rare for 3rd gen motherboards, and it also has USB 3 on the back as well. And the power delivery on this thing doesn't seem too bad because it's not holding back the i7-3770. Granted, it is a locked CPU. I've also made some additions to it as well, with a white LED strip going down the back of it. This illuminates the PC and adds a bit of a wow factor to it. When I come to sell this, it will probably help it sell quite a bit as well. I also had this sleeved 6-pin PCIe cable lying around, and it looks pretty good, so I thought I may as well just put it in the PC. But it does look a bit weird with the orange on the motherboard, so if this was an orange cable, it'd look a lot better. And lastly is the case. This is the Montech Air 100, and for around £35, which I paid for this, it's an incredible value. It has a swinging glass side panel door, which is amazing because it's a better mechanism than my NZXT H700, and it also comes with 3 fans standard. All of these are 120mm, and it comes with 3 intakes and 1 exhaust, so I'd be happy putting much higher end hardware in here. As usual with these PC builds, not only have I built it, I've also benchmarked it as well, and this is good as it allows me to give content to you lot and it also allows me to stress test the PC before I sell it too. All testing today is done at 1080p, and FSR has been used in some games, but I'll say when it's been used. This allows the RX 570 to have a fighting chance, especially in them AAA games. I've also overclocked the RX 570 as well, putting 1350 MHz on the core, and on the memory clock I upped it to 1800 MHz. This should help out quite a bit in gaming. Starting off with the Cinebench R23 figures, and I like testing on Cinebench just to see where the CPU's performance is at. With the single core performance, the i7-3770 got 791, which is not too bad, and for the multi-core performance it got 3676, so this is not too bad at all in my opinion, and the i7 is perfectly fine even though it's 11 years old. It kind of does show how stagnant CPU development was in the mid 2010s. Modern Warfare 2 is the first game up today, and here I set it to the basic preset and up the textures to normal. This makes the game look a ton better as the low textures are just very muddy and they look awful. And as FSR 2.1 was newly added, I decided to set this to quality as well. And with 85 FPS on average and 59 for the 1% low, performance here was okay, nothing to write home about, but you can have a competitive experience with this configuration. On lower end hardware, I always recommend the Performance API when it comes to Fortnite, just to squeeze out as much performance as possible out of this configuration. Yes, the Performance API does not look very good, but if you're chasing performance, sacrifices are going to have to be made. And this got 186 FPS on average and 59 FPS for the 1% low. Your performance may vary, as I landed at Anvil Square and there was a lot of challenges because the new update had just come out, so a lot of people were landing at Anvil Square, so this is sort of a worst case scenario for you. I decided to test Battlefield 1 today, and I know it's not the newest Battlefield, but I keep seeing it on my TikTok For You page and it's a game I like, and I thought, yeah, let's just test it today. And Battlefield 1 is a very CPU intensive game, so I'll be testing how well the i7 performs here as well. But on the medium preset, it performed pretty decently if I'm honest, getting 76 FPS on average with 49 FPS for the 1% low. The extra threads on the i7 are definitely helping out here, because Battlefield 1 is just basically unplayable on a 4-core 4-thread CPU, so yeah, thank you to hyperthreading, we can play it. Testing was done in operations, which is probably the most intensive game mode, as all the action is condensed into a single part of the map. So this is yet again the worst case scenario for Battlefield. F122 is a game that seems to not care what CPU you have. With that being said, on the medium preset, performance was great here on the West Australian Grand Prix benchmark, with 91 FPS on average, with 67 FPS for the 1% low. I'd recommend keeping it on medium if you've got sort of a 75Hz panel, maybe drop it to low or even very low if you've got a 144Hz display. F1 is a very lightweight title and it should perform pretty good for you on this configuration. Moving to the AAA games here with Cyberpunk. It had an update recently with better ray tracing quality called Overdrive, I believe, so if you want to see that being tested on my RTX 3080 PC, let me know. But back to the RX 570 system now, setting it to low with FSR 2.1 on quality, we have 53 FPS on average with 38 FPS for the 1% low. So Cyberpunk is playable, getting just over 50 FPS. If you want to up the graphics to around medium, you should be getting around 30 FPS and you shouldn't be exceeding the 4GB of frame buffer either. Cyberpunk doesn't seem too intensive with video memory, so this might not be a bad option for you if you want more of a, well, cinematic experience, because it is 30 FPS. Last game up is Horizon Zero Dawn, and I mainly put this here because I'm playing it right now on my main system, to be honest. That's probably the only reason I'm benchmarking it, but it's another AAA game, and on the medium or original quality preset, this PC did pretty well with 66 FPS on average, with 44 FPS for the 1% low. FSR quality was enabled here, so that did help out with the performance ever so slightly, but yet again it performs fine and it looks fine as well, so you'd be having a great experience here. Overall, not a bad showing for a £250 PC. If you were willing to shop around a bit more, maybe you could get a bit of a better deal maybe getting this for south of £200. But throughout benchmarking and testing, there were no weird issues with the PC, like no blue screens or anything like that. There was a game crash, but I think that was because of my overclock, and then I did dial it down to the settings I stated earlier, and it's been stable at these settings. So if you're not interested in newer games and you just want to play esports games, older games and just indie games, this PC is certainly good enough for games like that at 1080p. And if it will run games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Fortnite at decent frame rates, expect it to run Counter-Strike Go, Rainbow Six Siege, Minecraft and GTA 5M and others perfectly fine as well. It's no coincidence that some of the most popular games in the world right now are very easy to run. So this PC seems all great, right? There's no issues with it. Well, there are some issues which are very minor, but I'd like to change and address some of them. The main one being the SSD. It's a great SSD, don't get me wrong, and it gave no problems while testing, but NVMe Gen 3 SSDs are around the same price as SATA SSDs now, so you may as well upgrade to one of them if you have an M.2 slot on your motherboard. This motherboard does have a Gen 3 NVMe slot on it, so I may as well have went with a Gen 3 SSD. So that's an upgrade I could have done. Another change that I would have probably made looking back at it is I could have shopped around a lot more. I could have got a better deal on the graphics card, maybe the CPU, motherboard and RAM as well. That is something I could have done, and it's not a big deal and it doesn't affect the actual final result here. It just cost me a bit more. But other than that though, I think all the parts in this PC complement each other pretty well. The single core performance of the i7-3770 isn't necessarily the best. I know there was a big jump with 4th gen and then again with 6th gen, but for an RX 570, the 3770 is perfectly fine, especially as it has 8 threads as well, so you can play games like Battlefield on it. And this brings me to the final question which has yet to be answered, and that is, do I recommend this PC? And I would say, if you're into AAA games, no, it's not really going to be a great experience there. You're going to be playing at low settings, with FSR enabled, it's not going to be looking the best. But if you're in it for the esports games like Fortnite, Counter-Strike, even games like Minecraft, this PC is perfectly fine for games like that. Playing at 1080p and getting decent frame rates while you're at it. Pair this with a budget 144Hz monitor and you'll be having a great gaming experience. And I do have to say, with consoles like the Xbox Series S, which I do have to recommend at this price point because it is an incredibly great value console and you can get a lot better price to performance with that thing. But if you want to do some video editing, light video editing and other productivity tasks, the PC is going to be the one for you. So with this being said, I'm going to say this PC is worth it if you're into just competitive gaming and you want to play on keyboard and mouse and you want to do a few productivity things on the side as well. It's still capable of that. This PC would be perfect for you. So I'm going to leave the video here. If you like this one, like it, stay subscribed for more tech content, and I'll catch you in the next one.